What if I told you a single sentence, just one line, was all it took to shatter the composure of a seasoned government official live on air? That in the heart of Washington, in a hearing no one expected to matter, truth slipped through the cracks. And what followed was a political unraveling the country never saw coming. Stay with me, because by the end of this story, you won't see power the same way again. Dear friends, what you're about to hear is more than just a story. It's a glimpse into a world where quiet courage reshapes destinies and dignity outshines power. These are the voices often missed by the headlines, but not here. If this kind of storytelling moves you, if it stays with you long after the screen fades, we invite you to subscribe and ring the bell. And before we dive in, tell us where you're watching from. We read every word. Now let's begin. No one walked into that hearing room expecting history. The air inside room 312 of the Hart Senate office building in Washington, D.C. was thick with routine. Stacked folders, murmured updates, the subtle hum of hidden microphones. It was the kind of morning that barely registered. Grey skies, low light, a soft drizzle making the marble steps outside slick and forgettable. Reporters yawned behind velvet ropes, aides scrolled through phones, and staffers buzzed around the edges of protocol like bees that had done it 100 times before. Kash Patel entered like he owned the floor, composed, confident, even a bit smug. His navy suit was pressed, his pocket square precise, and the way he nodded at his attorney said it all. This was going to be easy. The committee's questions were expected, the optics managed, and his answers, well, they were already rehearsed. He leaned back in his chair, checked his watch, and smiled faintly, unaware that this would be the last time he felt in control that day. Across the room, Representative Jasmine Crockett arrived with none of the theatrics. She moved quietly, methodically, her legal pad tight against her chest, her team trailing behind her like shadows. Her aide, a sharp-eyed woman in a silver blazer named Rena Vasquez, handed her one last document before slipping into the back row. Jasmine didn't speak. She didn't need to. The precision of her movements said everything. Today was not going to be routine. When Chairman Wallace tapped his gavel to bring the session to order, no one sensed the coming fracture. But like all historic moments, it wasn't loud at first. It started with a paper, a single page, pulled carefully from a manila folder. Jasmine Crockett read it silently as Patel glanced at his phone. The room was silent, but not still. There was a charge, an invisible tension crawling across the panel like static before a lightning strike. Everyone thought they knew what this hearing was about. Everyone thought they were safe behind rules and procedures and polished statements. But within the next hour, one line read aloud would split that illusion in half. And by the end of it, Kash Patel wouldn't just be answering questions, he'd be fighting for the narrative of his entire career. And it all began in silence. 32 minutes into the hearing, the rhythm was still standard. Timelines, names, dates. Kash Patel answered each question with sharp, professional brevity, as if checking boxes in a well-worn script. His eyes never strayed far from his lawyer, and his voice maintained that polished cadence of someone who had prepared for every angle. The committee seemed to nod along. For the first time in weeks, it almost felt predictable. Then the chairman looked to his left and gave a simple nod. Jasmine Crockett adjusted her microphone. She didn't clear her throat. She didn't raise her voice. Her tone remained calm, even, as she addressed Patel directly. Mr. Patel, in your previous testimony, you asserted that no written communications existed between you and Mr. Farrow regarding the February 11th intelligence session. Is that still your claim today? Kash nodded confidently. That's correct, Representative. I stand by that statement. Jasmine didn't blink. Her hand slid beneath the folder in front of her, and from it she drew a single sheet, white, crisp, unassuming. The ink looked recent. She placed it on the stand and read, "Dated February 10th, addressed to Mr. Farrow from your personal email account, referencing detailed logistics, agenda points, and contingency planning for the very meeting you just denied." For a moment, Kash didn't react. Then a flicker, barely perceptible, crossed his face. A twitch in the jaw, a brief scan of the room. His attorney sat up straighter. Jasmine continued, line by line, reading directly from the document. Each sentence struck with precision. No inflection, no dramatics, just cold fact. When she finished, she added quietly, "We've also verified the email headers with 2 independent analysts. The metadata is intact, time-stamped, original. Would you like to respond, Mr. Patel?" The silence that followed wasn't blank. It was loaded, the kind that dares someone to lie when the truth is already in the room. Kash finally leaned forward, his voice more clipped now. I can't confirm that's authentic. It might be a draft, or misattributed." Jasmine simply nodded and slid another paper forward. Behind her, Rena passed a colored screenshot to the committee, a text message referencing the doc sent last night. "Keep it off radar." Patel's signature followed. This wasn't just a contradiction, it was a revelation, and in that instant everyone watching understood the unraveling had just begun. The moment Kash Patel exited the hearing room, the atmosphere shifted from tense to electric. His departure wasn't just a procedural hiccup, it was a seismic event that sent shockwaves through the political landscape. Reporters scrambled to update headlines, social media platforms buzzed with speculation, and the public's curiosity intensified. The image of Patel's empty chair became a symbol of accountability, or the lack thereof. Inside the chamber, Representative Jasmine Crockett remained composed. She reviewed a new set of documents handed to her moments before. These weren't just supplementary materials, they were potential game changers. The content hinted at a broader network of communication strategies designed to evade oversight. Encrypted messages, undisclosed meetings, and a pattern of obfuscation painted a picture of deliberate concealment. As the committee reconvened, the gravity of the situation became apparent. Crockett presented a memo detailing a deconfliction plan aimed at avoiding traceable channels. The language was explicit, outlining methods to bypass standard protocols and suggesting a systemic approach to information suppression. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Patel's return to the hearing was subdued. Gone was the confident demeanor. In its place was a man visibly burdened by the weight of unfolding revelations. When questioned about the memo, his responses were evasive, attributing the language to informal discussions or misinterpretations. However, the consistency of the documents and corroborating evidence made such defenses increasingly untenable. The fallout extended beyond the hearing room. Public trust in institutional transparency was shaken. Calls for comprehensive investigations grew louder, and the demand for accountability became a bipartisan issue. The incident underscored the importance of vigilance in governance and the role of determined individuals in upholding democratic principles. In the days that followed, the narrative evolved from a singular event to a broader discourse on ethics, responsibility, and the mechanisms of power. The hearing served as a catalyst for introspection within governmental agencies and among the citizenry. It was a stark reminder that the pursuit of truth often requires resilience, courage, and an unwavering commitment to justice. Under the harsh lights of the hearing room, as the documents were entered into the record and the air thickened with disbelief, a different kind of silence settled. It wasn't the silence of shock, It was the silence of realization. What had initially seemed like a single witness faltering under the weight of scrutiny was now revealing itself as the symptom of a far more intricate disease. Representative Jasmine Crockett, still composed and deliberate, was no longer just cross-examining a former official. She was peeling back the layers of a system designed to obscure truth under the guise of process. The memo marked "deconfliction plan" had been the tipping point, but the real story stretched beyond its bullet points. It revealed an entire culture within institutions where information was curated, communications were rerouted, and plausible deniability was rehearsed like theatre. This wasn't just about Kash Patel's actions, it was about the architecture that allowed such actions to flourish undetected. And as Jasmine read aloud, line after line, it became clear. This wasn't negligence, this was design. Outside the Rayburn House office building, the ripple effect was immediate. Analysts, journalists, and citizens began revisiting old hearings, old testimonies, old records. Questions surfaced. Who else knew? What else was hidden? How deep did this network of quiet avoidance truly go? There was no dramatic exposé waiting in the wings. Instead, what followed was a collective awakening, a sense that this wasn't an isolated betrayal, but part of something systemic. Meanwhile, the public, often dismissed as disengaged, proved otherwise. Hashtags turned into movements. Civics teachers played the hearing clip in classrooms. Independent watchdogs filed FOIA requests in record numbers. Jasmine Crockett's calm dismantling of defensive spin had reminded Americans of their right to clarity and their power to demand it. This was no longer about political allegiance. It was about civic trust. And trust, once fractured, is not easily repaired. The hearings had unearthed more than misconduct. They had forced the nation to confront the quiet agreements we make when we stop asking hard questions. Now those questions were being asked louder than ever before. And the echo wasn't fading. It was growing. In the days following the hearing, Washington did not return to normal. The streets outside the Capitol buzzed, not with the noise of routine, but with murmurs of reckoning. Kash Patel had vanished from the public eye, his team issuing a lukewarm statement meant to contain fallout that had already spread far beyond his control. But while his silence was deafening, Jasmine Crockett's composure lingered like a steady drumbeat through the nation's consciousness. She did not appear on the talk shows or take a victory lap. There were no triumphant press conferences, no celebratory tweets. Instead, she returned to her office, opened a plain manila folder marked with fresh notes, and quietly resumed her work. Behind her, Brenda, the aide who had stood by through every second of that storm, placed a new stack of correspondence on her desk, letters from across the country. Teachers, veterans, single parents, law students. Many didn't write about politics, they wrote about truth, about dignity, about the shock of seeing someone speak plainly in a place so often clouded by pretense. One envelope came from a small town in Idaho. The handwriting was shaky, but the message was clear. I watched every minute. I didn't understand all the procedures, but I understood her. I understood what she was trying to protect. Jasmine held that letter longer than the others. Meanwhile, investigations expanded. The Oversight Committee, previously cautious, now pressed forward with unprecedented transparency. Independent journalists began tracking threads previously dismissed as unprovable. Other government witnesses requested to amend past statements. The ripple was no longer a ripple, it was a shift. What this moment revealed wasn't just a failure of oversight or the exposure of a single figure. It revealed the fragility of the systems we trust. And more importantly, it revealed how easily that trust can be rebuilt, not with grand gestures, but with unyielding honesty, held steady under pressure. Jasmine Crockett had not just uncovered misconduct. She had reminded the nation that accountability is not radical, it's necessary. And in doing so, she gave voice to something far greater than politics, the quiet, determined demand for a government that does not hide behind complexity but stands up for clarity, no matter how uncomfortable the truth may be. The story of Kash Patel and Jasmine Crockett didn't end when the cameras stopped rolling. What began as a seemingly ordinary hearing in a quiet Capitol Hill room became a mirror held up to a nation grappling with its relationship to truth, transparency, and power. Patel, once confident and composed, unraveled before the public as evidence piled up, not just emails and memos, but a culture of calculated obfuscation. It wasn't the exposure of one lie that made this story matter. It was the methodical, unshakable unveiling of a system that had counted on no one asking the right questions. Jasmine Crockett didn't shout. She didn't posture. She asked questions with precision, laid facts bare without embellishment, and trusted that the weight of truth would speak louder than any performance. And it did. Her calm, firm presence became a beacon for millions who watched the hearing unfold in real time or caught it through viral clips, late-night commentary, or classroom discussions. What she delivered wasn't a gotcha moment, it was a reminder of what accountability is supposed to look like. From the intern who muttered, "She's about to cook this man," to the elderly woman who wrote, "I know when someone's hiding something." The resonance of this event stretched far beyond politics. It became a cultural moment, one that cut across age, geography, and ideology. People who never paid attention to congressional hearings suddenly couldn't look away. But perhaps the most important takeaway is this: courage isn't loud, it's deliberate. It's the steady voice in the room full of evasion. It's doing your homework. It's refusing to be intimidated by hierarchy or protocol when justice is at stake. Crockett didn't act alone. Behind her was a team, quiet aides, unsung whistleblowers, and a public that still believes in the power of scrutiny. And maybe that's the true legacy of this story. A reminder that every structure, no matter how polished or protected, can be challenged by truth, if someone cares enough to look closely. So what can we learn from all this? In our daily lives, we might not sit on government panels or review federal memos, but we do encounter moments where silence feels easier than confrontation. This story reminds us that integrity isn't about always being right. It's about being brave enough to ask hard questions, even when the answers make people uncomfortable. It's about paying attention, listening closely, and when needed, speaking truth with calm precision. Quick question to you, our viewers. If you were in Jasmine Crockett's place, what would you do first? A. Hold back and double-check everything with your legal team before speaking. B. Go public immediately and let the evidence speak for itself. Comment your answer below, A or B, and tell us why. We'd love to hear your thoughts. And one more thing, what do you think is the biggest takeaway from this story? Drop your insights in the comments so others can learn from your perspective too. If this story moved you, made you think, or gave you hope, hit subscribe and support the channel. That's how we keep bringing you powerful stories that matter. And trust us, there's more to come.